Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. I'm Caroline HEWARD and I'm your host for this evening. This is A Woman's Prerogative Part 2 in partnership with E360 TV. A warm welcome to our usual viewers and our friends at E360 TV, and a warm welcome and a hello to all our friends at ROKU Worldwide, Amazon Fire, as well as our usual platforms, which are YouTube, X, Facebook and LinkedIn. A very warm welcome if you're here on the live and on the replay. Our show, A Woman's Prerogative, Part 2. We had a very interesting conversation in Part 1, and I have an expert panelist joining me all the way from New Zealand. And please welcome MARISKA de PREEZ, all the way from New Zealand, coach extraordinaire.
Thank you, Caroline. It is wonderful to be with you, and I cannot wait to jump into this topic. I did some research last night, your very early morning hours, and found some fabulous people doing fabulous things that I didn't even know of. So we are definitely standing on big shoulders today, and I cannot wait to jump into this.
Wonderful. Well, for our viewers that are joining us for the first time, please do share a little bit about what you do and who you help.
So I work with leaders, whether you are an up-and-coming leader stepping into leadership for the very first time, or whether you are a seasoned leader and want to take your leadership a step further and elevate yourself within that space. So typically this is especially in areas where we specialized in some shape or form. So we might have studied engineering or to become a doctor or a lawyer, whatever the case might be. And then we move into a leadership space. It is quite a different space to what we studied. So this is where I help. And of course, I am always open to wonderful conversations, even if you aren't too sure whether you want to step into leadership. That's also something that we can explore together. And that is how I help.
Thank you, MARISKA. And for me, I help people bust their stress. How do I do that? I work with root cause therapy and chakra psychology, literally breaking through the blueprint, the patterns, your repeating patterns that create your physical, emotional, mental, behavioral pain. So if you're saying, you're walking around and saying you're not stressed, but you're not sleeping very well, and you're complaining about a relationship or a physical ache and pain, that is how your stress is manifesting. So I help you identify the root cause by using chakra psychology and root cause therapy to break down the patterns and release the emotion that's creating the trauma. So without further ado, and before we get into our topic, I know I'm really excited about this. I do want to share with you our mission. Our mission on this channel is to raise and to create 100,000 subscribers of our channel, USA Global TV and Radio, and our other channel, Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. We are aiming to reach 100,000. We are now 38,779, and that is an exact total. So do click the subscribe and subscribe to both channels so that you can join our community and be there firsthand and know what's coming up and be inspired, educated, and entertained. We also have a VIP exclusive community, which is our Royal channel, and you will get firsthand, it's hot off the press from London, what's happening in our royal family. Do subscribe to this VIP community because it is straight off the press. Well, without further ado, we're going to move into our topic, and our topic today is an interesting one: trailblazing innovations. Innovations, women who change the world with their inventions. So we talked about a number of people that I mentioned to you backstage, so we're not going to repeat those, and we've got some new ones. So please do share, Mariska, when you think about innovators, what's your first thought? What comes to mind? Do you think generally about women, or do you, first of all, do you see men that come up in your mind?
This is a good question. I think for me, it's a little bit of a mix. And the reason why it is a bit of a mix is most probably because I grew up on a farm with, well, both my parents, and we had to innovate from time to time to get things fixed and done. And both of them had some innovative ideas. So typically, when I think about innovation and making something better, new, different, both come up. I think for me, in the, shall we call it, corporate space, typically men would come up more, and only, I think, because as a society we focus on that more, which was also one of the great reasons why I am so excited about this topic today, because once I started digging into it, I found so many interesting places where women had their fingers and brains in some ideas that we are using today. So, and not only in areas where we would think, oh, well, that is something where women can contribute. So, for instance, in the medical field, because we are typically in that space. But there's also other areas that I found very, very fascinating. And also, one of the other things that came up for me as I was thinking about innovation, I thought, well, most of the innovation would most probably be around things that we typically might be involved in, right? So, for instance, home appliances or stuff like that was the thing that came up for me. And I have to say, I was very happy to be surprised that that was not the only places that females popped up in. So that is what came up for me. How about you, Caroline?
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I also found some people that it's what we're working with, and that was very interesting for me to see. But yes, you're right. I always think about the men, and so doing this research really opened up my eyes. The other thing about it is that I feel that men seem to put their foot forward much more. You know, you seem to hear much more about what the men have done. And I'm wondering, you know, what your thoughts about in terms of looking at why is it that there isn't many people? Because I'm sure that there are lots of inventions that have been made by women, and actually their counterparts, the men, have put them forward and owned them themselves. And one of my thoughts is that there might be confidence issues. We did look at this in part one. What are your thoughts about self-esteem, confidence issues in terms of women putting their inventions forward? to be looked at and to be patented?
It's interesting you bring that up, because one of the people that I looked at was Margaret Knight. Now, she invented a machine that produced paper bags, and it actually it had a way of gluing the paper bag together so it stays intact. And her machine, initially, a guy went, I can't remember his name, and he wanted to patent the machine. And she said, no, this is my invention. You're not going to do that. And she took him to court, and she won. And
Wow.
that was her very, very first patent. And I think she was one of the very first women that got a patent. So that was something where she said, no, it's mine. You are not going to take this. And he wanted to say, yeah, but what lady would ever be able to explain anything mechanical like this? Of course, because she invented it. He was very sorry he asked that question. So I think for a lot of us, there is bias playing into this. So definitely a problem in society, and also a problem for us as individuals. Not necessarily speaking when we need to, or standing back going, oh, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not whatever enough. It is a problem for ladies, I think, in general, that we need to step up to it more. I know even within my own business, I have taken some time to step into my own full value. And I know for a lot of guys that would start the same sort of business, they don't have a problem with it. It's like, they're there. You either pay me what I'm worth, or you don't get to work with me. That's it. And they're quite adamant about it. And it feels like, for some odd reason, in the female gender, we have a lot more of the imposter syndrome. Are we good enough? Do we know how to do this? Whereas with most males, whether they know how to do it or not, they have confidence that they can figure it out. And guess what, ladies? So do we. So I think it is high time that we stand up for ourselves and figure it out as we go. Nothing's stopping us from doing that.
I am so on your page. I really love what you've just shared. And it's just reminded me of the fact that I'm a chartered marketer. So I did all the exams and I graduated off my postgrad. And I took the exams and the training very seriously, because that's what I do. Whatever I do, I take very seriously. And when I got into marketing, what I found that there was more people there that were men, and they weren't qualified. And that was really throwing me, because I spent a lot of money, I invested a lot of time and energy in making sure I got good grades and good qualifications. And it didn't seem to matter. There was a lot of people that had, a lot of men within marketing and PR that had just literally, put it on there and winged their way through it. And they got the results in terms of the job. And that in turn made them on the board because they were able to say the right things. So what are your thoughts about what I've just shared, Mariska, in terms of the fact that I worked hard and made sure I got the qualifications, and yet I was met with a lot of people that didn't have them and almost ridiculed the fact that I got qualifications, but it was the door opener for me, not the thing that actually made me get the promotions, but it was the door opener.
I think that is a typical experience for a lot of women. Especially because we don't only have to contend with whatever the requirements are for said job or position. We also need to contend with the biases that is within that, established within that environment. And that makes it really, really tricky for most of us to actually break through into spaces. So being aware of what it is that you need, for a lot of women, it almost feels like we need to do twice as much as men. And it is not necessarily because we have brains that explode when we think too much. It is because that's the bias. And because you have a bias around it, it becomes a bit of a problem. So I've also had a bit of a look as to different areas. So for instance, in Germany, you find that the workforce within the engineering space is almost split half and half. So you have half filled with men and half filled with women. But when you look at other areas of other countries, you have different percentages. And where you have those, where you have a minority of any one of the two genders, you find that there's bias within that space. So that's something to be very aware of. Even within spaces where typically, for instance, we find a lot of ladies, right? It becomes a little bit more tricky for men to get into those spaces because they are then in the minority space. And of course, as we very well know, the other way around too. So any spaces where we have a minority, we need to be very, very conscious of what biases play within that space. And it will, in all likelihood, make especially the ones that step into the space early on, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them than for the ones that follow. And that is why we are looking at innovators, because that's the people that actually go first and go, well, I have an idea and I'm going to put it out into the world and see what happens. And both genders do that. And sometimes we get wonderful, wonderful things from what people invent. And I was fascinated to look at the different places where women actually started to sort of put those foundation blocks in place. Because with one innovation, you build on it and you get the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So that always, to me, is the evolution of whatever the innovation is. I mean, aeroplanes today does not look the same than they did, well, way back when they started out. And neither does cars or anything else for that matter.
What a beautiful segue. I have a couple of examples, literally, of what you've described. And I'd like to share them because it's so relevant to what you've just said, that they start and then somebody else continues. So my first one is Emmy Noether. Now, she was Albert Einstein's wife, and she developed a theorem in 1920, which was the foundation for quantum physics. And it helped Einstein create the formula for the theory of relativity. And he actually recognized her quietly by saying, she's been the backbone, she's been behind all of this. But Emmy Noether doesn't get recognized. She doesn't get talked about. It's Albert Einstein. But she actually created the formula. She was the one behind it, behind the fact that he got the theory of relativity. So she's a forgotten hero. And this is a person that was behind her husband that failed to get the recognition. And one other, Alan Turing. I'm sure that many people have heard of Alan Turing from Bletchley Park. They were creating code. They were breaking code for the German allies, for the German people when we were in World War II. And what they had was a lot of women, as well as men. They had a lot of women that were breaking the codes, the messages. And Joan Clark, what she did is she became the biggest code breaker. And she was responsible for the fact that the U-boats, that a lot of people were saved because she intercepted messages and broke the code. Now, they didn't declare what the code was, but she broke the code and was able to save thousands and thousands of lives. And again, she wasn't really recognized externally in the public world. Alan Turing was the one that was recognized for his machine. But if it wasn't for Joan Clark, then it wouldn't have happened. The code wouldn't have been there. And she started to see what was missing. So she was solving the problems. And what she was recognized many years later with an award. I'm going to just read this. As a member of the British Empire, she was awarded in 1946, which was after the war and after everything had changed. What are your thoughts about what I've just shared?
I find it fascinating how especially these two ladies were so instrumental in certain things, and yet as a society we didn't recognize them. In the case of Albert Einstein, I'm sure he loved his wife to bits, and he was very grateful for all her innovations. And I am sure that there are a lot of wives, mothers, sisters that help out their brothers, husbands, sons along the way with some very good ideas. So do please go and say thank you to them if you have not. And if it is possible to bring them into the thanks once something bigger happen, because I think that being able to not flow with somebody else's calves is sort of a South African thing. So not using somebody else's ideas and making them our own, but really recognizing that person for what they brought to the table. And I'm sure we are all very guilty of this in some way, shape, or form at some stage of our life. So being able to recognize that person, whether it is the person in your team, whether it is the person that maybe you don't like as much, if it was their idea, recognize them for it. And you never know, you might even find somebody like Hedy Lamarr that designed or innovated within the frequency hopping technology space. Now, when she did this way back when, in the early 900s, she never knew that it would also be used for GPS systems and Wi-Fi. So if you have no other females to thank in your life, do thank her, even if it is in your thoughts, because without her, we would not be able to be doing this.
Fantastic. I love that. I saw that one. I knew you would pick up that one. In part one, I did mention about Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and he authored the book, and it was a huge success and being read by millions, literally millions of people. Now, that was first authored and written by a woman. And we don't hear about this very often. I actually did I had some training with her when she was in London, and her name is Sharon Lechter. And she's written some books in her own right and really put her name on it. Now, she actually wrote it to begin with, and Napoleon Hill took the script and published it. And that was, that's the story that she shared, because I thought that was absolutely incredible. And I did some additional training with her because she was the one behind the ideas. She wasn't the one that published. And now she's doing a lot more in terms of getting her self-name. And that was something that I mentioned in part one, but I wasn't quite sure of her name. I knew it was Sharon, but I wasn't quite sure. So I wanted to bring that to conclusion in terms of identifying that Sharon Lechter is the brains behind Think and Grow Rich. And it was the publishing side of things that Napoleon Hill did, because at that time it would have been much more feasible for the man to do the publishing rather than the woman. And this is something that keeps coming up, and we mentioned this and we talked about the fact that women at that time were not recognised, so it was usually the men that got put forward for the prizes and for the recognition. So what are your thoughts about what I've just shared with you there? Because that's something different in part 2. But did you know that it was actually authored by a woman?
Well, no, I did not. And I think that is one of the things that, going through the research that even I did, there was a lot of people that popped up, and I thought, oh, okay, I would have never thought that she did this or she did that, whatever the thing was. There were some ones that I personally knew as just going through life. Typically that pops up. So for instance, I cannot remember the lady's name. I do apologize for that. And I do not have it at my fingertips at the moment. But the person that created baby nappy proofing. So I know that these days, most parents possibly have no idea what it is that I'm talking about. But way back when we still used cloth nappies, they can be quite a bit of a mess if you don't have a little baby proof nappy proofer over top of it. So it's basically a plastic bag with holes in it where your legs go through. And that was invented by a lady because, well, as you can imagine, it made quite a bit of a mess and she didn't want to deal with the mess. So she came up with an idea to prevent the mess from happening, which is really, really good. Later on, as nappies changed, she also helped out with the new nappies that we get these days. So those sort of things I knew about, and it is, I think for me, it was mostly because, well, it is something that we work with most often, right? And if we are exposed to it, the likelihood of us coming up with an idea to fix it is increased. So wherever it is that you find yourself, I am sure that you are also very innovative in your own space and coming up with ideas to make it better. Anything you do that make it better than it was before is an innovation of sorts. So never discount your innovative natures within that space. And as Caroline mentioned, also, well, be wary of where you share it so that you can make sure that you get the credit you deserve.
Thank you, Mariska. And I've had a note from wonderful broadcaster, Dr. JACALYN, who's corrected me by saying it was alleged that it was written by Sharon Lechter. And so forgive me, I shall make that apology here. Yes, it was alleged, and we don't know for sure because it was so long ago. So it's important to make sure that I'm feeding back a third-hand story, and it might not actually be true. So alleged. And that brings me very neatly onto another wonderful trailblazer, Betty Nesman Graham. In 1951, she created and became a millionaire. She was a secretary, and she became a millionaire by creating something called Mistake Out. So very, very interesting segue here, Mistake Out. It was a homemade typewriter correction fluid. And she created that because she was solving a problem. She was solving a problem when she was typing and making a mistake, because this was a long time ago, 1951, there was no computers then. It was on the typewriter, and she created Mistake Out, which then was rebranded as now we use something called it's Tipp-Ex, isn't it, where you can literally paint out. She created the recipe for and she perfected the birth of liquid paper. So she perfected that recipe of mistake out and created liquid paper. Now, this is something that's come from a secretary solving a problem. So she didn't have to type everything all over again. And this is what Mariska was saying, that it's about the problems that we solve. And when we've got a problem that we're dealing with, this is where it comes from. And there is a lot of women doing these types of roles that have come up with extraordinary inventions. What are your thoughts about Mistake Out, which has been rebranded much more eloquently as a Tipp-Ex, or, you know, sort of a correction fluid?
Well, I think they could have rebranded it as a environmentally great product as well, because with Mistake Out, you didn't need to rip out the whole piece of paper that you were typing on. You could actually just correct that small piece of mistake, type over it, and continue with the rest of the document, which is wonderful. Less trees had to suffer for our mistakes, literally our mistakes.
Absolutely.
So that was a really good invention. And one of the other people, as you were talking about Mistake Out, when we make mistakes, well, typically not great. And if you have ever wanted to get from point A to B and you were wondering who was the wonderful person that helped you with your GPS to actually do so without, well, getting too lost along the way, except if you are one of my twins, GPSs does not necessarily work, you can thank Gladys West for that. So she initially worked and wanted to understand the geo system of the Earth, so understanding how to pinpoint us on the planet a little bit more. And she invented the GeoSat system. So that is a way of looking at the planet and the different, so if you look at mountains, for instance, seeing how high they are from the sea, those sort of things. And then she continued and had some insights into the GPS system as well. So that is a person that you can thank, because you don't get lost as often, hopefully, anymore. If, of course, you do not follow my own directional prowess and ignore your GPS, because that sometimes does not work so well. So if you are off to an adventure, different story altogether, of course. What's your thoughts on that, Caroline?
Incredible. You know, I knew you'd come up with the engineering type, you know, the techie type things. So I deliberately, when I was doing my research, didn't go to those. I went to the ones that were a little bit more, you know, fluid. You know what I mean? And I saw those and I thought, oh wow, you know, that's just so cool. So I could see your list performing and being created as my list was being created. And it's just true to form. We know each other really well, and we know where we're going to lean. So I want to share Josephine Cochrane. Make sure I get this pronunciation. She created the dishwasher. And after her husband died, she started marketing it to hotels, and she's responsible for the dishwasher, the way that it is, where you stack the dishes in every person's home that has decided to have a dishwasher. So that was a quick one. And Lessing Greer, in 1899, she created the one-handed syringe, because prior to that, it was two hands to actually create an injection. Again, a woman having a problem and solving the problem. What do you think about that?
Well, I have to say I am very thankful for my dishwasher. So all my gratitude goes to her. I absolutely do not enjoy washing dishes, and neither does my husband. So before we got married, I told him that for us, a dishwasher would be a good investment. So I am so glad that she invented the dishwasher. Otherwise, it might have been a really tough time for me in my relationship. And as you were mentioning the syringe, somebody that came up for me is Gertrude Ilion. And what she did is she made it possible for us to have organs that is transplanted into, well, anybody that needs one. Because typically, if you are aware about organ transplantation, there is a risk for your body to reject it. So even if everything else is equal and you have the same blood type and it's as close a family member as you can possibly get and all the rest of the things, there's still a chance for the organ to be rejected. And she made medication that made it possible for us not to reject organs. So for anybody that has ever been in a space where you needed a new organ or gifted an organ, Gertrude is the person to thank that actually saves lives. And again, she worked within the medical field. So the space where she has her expertise is the space where she innovates, which means any of us can do this. And that makes me very, very exciting or excited. There you go.
Fantastic. We've had a good part here, haven't we? I've got one final one because we are towards the end of our show. And there's one final one that I wanted to share, and that's only because I've actually renewed my glasses. I'm going to pick them up this week. And another World War II. Yeah, I've really focused on World War II. Catherine Burr-Blodgett, she created the glass, the tempered glass, the reflective glass for our glasses. Fascinating, isn't it? And she also did research based that created gas masks and also smoke screens. She also that glass that she's created is responsible for car shields, as well as the glasses that we wear, and also computer screens. So something that happened so long ago in World War II from Catherine has created something that we're using every day and in today's world. So that's kind of about it. We've run out of time, and I still have lots more to share with you. And at the same time, we really have covered this as much as we could to make sure that we brought some interesting trailblazing innovators that were women leading the way. So before we leave, please, Mariska, share how people can contact you.
So if you are a leader stepping into leadership or a already existing leader stepping up within your space, you can contact me via my email, which is mariska@journey2discover.com. Or alternatively, you can link up with me on LinkedIn and we can start our conversation there.
Thank you, Mariska. Before we close out, we'd like to show you Sharon Lechter's book for women. So our wonderful broadcaster is going to bring Sharon's book up so that you can see it. Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. And that's on Amazon. And for me, you can reach me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call me if you're international +44, if you're local 07523 120 189. This show is not meant to be controversial. It was just sharing what we have had in terms of our experiences. We're not dishing men. We're saying that women do have a place in our world and they have done more than we probably realize. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an amazing show and I still had more to cover, and I'm sure that Mariska did too. It's been an amazing A Woman's Prerogative Part 2, and we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. That's Monday at 7 p.m. British Summer Time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern Time for Part 1, and for Part 2, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. British Summer Time. Thank you very much, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Caroline HEWARD, and I've been your host for A Woman's Prerogative Part 2. And now over to our sponsors.
5 little-known secrets for dementia caregivers with Tracy Cram-Perkins.
Hi there, I am Tracy Cram-Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of the same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. Stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little-known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is in moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us, so it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take as long to acquire knowledge. The brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. Let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that.
These are 5 simple tools you can use as a dementia caregiver to help your loved one. The whiteboard is a useful tool in recording the day's activities and the answers to repetitive questions. The calendar clock is a very useful tool to orient your loved one on the day, the date, and the time, and remind them of upcoming appointments. The communication cards are a great tool to bridge the gap when they can no longer tell you what's wrong. And then there's the pill minder for when your loved one is still able to take pills but needs prompting. The final tool I want to share with you is the memory book. It tells your loved one's story. It's a great tool for distraction, redirection, also as a conversation starter, and telling you where they are in their story so you know how to answer their questions.
Music is probably the most powerful tool in your toolbox after laughter. Music is a way to maintain connection. It sticks with your brain longer than any other thing, including reading. When you're having an issue with somebody, you can play their favorite music if you move them to another room, something that makes them happy, or you can start singing songs together from their childhood. These are some of my favorite books for caregivers. My show airs on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, and you can view past episodes on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
This program has been brought to you in part by Tracy Cram-Perkins. Connect with her and order her book at tracycramperkins.com. For more information about Alzheimer's disease, support resources, and how you can help, contact the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900 or visit their website at www.alz.org. They offer 24/7 helpline support and a wealth of information to assist you and your loved ones. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents our partner and sponsor, Mr. Philip Sykes and the British School of Excellence. Building confidence, changing lives. And now, proudly presenting The Polished Professional.
On a transformative journey with the British School of Excellence's comprehensive suite of masterclasses, crafted to elevate your professional and personal life. 8 outstanding modules will elevate you to the next level. Module 1, Exploring Life's Purpose, delves into the depths of self-discovery, guiding you to chart your unique path to fulfillment and success. Module 2, Mastering Professional Presence and Confidence. This masterclass is a deep dive into the art of self-assurance and commanding presence, which is essential for standing out in today's competitive landscape. Module 3, learn the secrets of visual impact, how to curate a personal style that amplifies your professional brand. Module 4, mastering professional etiquette and communication excellence, navigating the nuances of corporate interaction with grace and tact. Module 5, elegance in eloquence. We impart powerful techniques to captivate and persuade any audience with your oratory skills. Module 6, unlock the potential of your emotional intelligence, EQ, and harness the ability to connect, empathize, and lead with emotional savvy. Module 7, mastering DISC, building a gateway to understanding behavioral styles, fostering better personal and professional relationships. Module 8, mastery in dining etiquette, building your confidence to perfect the subtleties of dining with finesse, enhancing your social savviness at any table. Step into the Polished Professional program where poise, elegance, and excellence aren't just taught, they're instilled for life. Join us to redefine your potential and polish your professional edge.
To learn more, go to thebritishschoolofexcellence.com. The British School of Excellence are investors in people. Let us invest in you. This program has been brought to you in part by Zane Carson Carruth, etiquette and protocol expert, international award-winning author, television show host, and philanthropist. Thank you to Zane, our official diamond sponsor for USA Global TV and Radio in partnership with E360 TV. Zane is the author of the world's first tooth fairy ever, as well as many other children's books. She's also the television host of Elegance, Polished Demeanor, and Posh Living, seen on USA Global TV and Radio.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Carruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating warm memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book, Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
To learn more about Zane, contact her through her website, zanecarruth.com, ZANECARRUTH.com. Order Zane's books and merchandise. Contact her about being a keynote speaker at your next event.